Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. Creation tools allows you to record and edit your broadcast so it sounds great. And they even distribute your broadcast for you so that it can be heard everywhere. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. So make sure you download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to Future Educators Talk with your hosts, Andrew Frett, DAMIAN Anderson, KJ Johnson II, and Coach Darnell Jerome. Now, let's talk education because FET starts now.
As you can see or hear on today, David Anderson and KJ Johnson II is not here today, but don't fret. They'll be here next week. They'll be here soon, very, very soon. So on today, we have a very special guest that will be joining us. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Harris. Hello, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Good, and you?
I'm doing well.
So welcome to Future Educators Talk. Can you tell us and the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. Well, thank you for having me here. My name is Jason Harris. A educator of almost 20 years in the game, both as a teacher, administrator, principal. Currently, I work in the School District of Philadelphia as a principal coach. So I've been doing that for the past 2 years. So I work with and coach a lot of principals in the city, specifically new principals. For a lot of the newer principals, I coach and support and do professional development for our leadership office in the city. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. So you said that you help coach new principals. Is that correct? So can you give us a little bit more detail about that?
Certainly. So my work is really around just making sure. So I coach from first year to veteran, but my primary caseload is the first year principals, and it's really to just kind of provide that support. Kind of, sharing with them some of the lessons that I've learned as a 14-year career principal, making sure, helping them to avoid those pitfalls, but also really helping them to really continuously hone the leadership traits and skills that they already have so that they can be successful in the work. And as you can imagine, leading a school in the pandemic is very difficult, and it requires a lot of support. And so my role is to really make sure that I support them so that they can feel success, while trying to manage a lot of the demands that come at them from all different ways, from parents, community, central office, etc. Just really try to help them be successful in managing that, particularly in such a very stressful year.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say to a person that's a first year principal, man, and they just seem to be having like a lot of stress, it's just not going the way that it needs to? Because that's a lot to handle, man. That's your territory. You know what I mean? When you're a principal, man, that's your kingdom. And if your kingdom falls, then everything else is not going to be in place. So how do you handle, principles of that nature where it's like it's there, but then it seems to kind of come tumbling down a little bit?
So I think if this pandemic has taught us anything, it really has taught us the importance of self-care, right?
Mm-hmm.
And establishing appropriate boundaries. And so one of the main focus of a lot of my conversations, particularly with new school leaders, is to make sure that they don't forget themselves. This job, the job of principalship is one where you continuously pour out to everybody. You give your heart and soul to your kids, your community, central office, to the local church organizations, to all of the, and then your own family, right?
Right.
And so it's really important that they understand that they have to be refilled, and so they can continue pouring. And so the job is really around talking about really understanding that self-care is not selfish, it's necessary, and then understanding how to really develop appropriate boundaries so that you can turn off work and enjoy a quality of life too, so that you could be happy leading schools, particularly in the pandemic, like we all have right now.
I like that.
Mhm.
I like that. Okay.
Do you also do you also help assistant principals as well? What if they also want to do principals as well?
Yes. So my work is with all school leaders, from principals to assistant principals. I'm one of 5 currently coaches in the city that works in the general office, the chief of schools office, and my office is called the leadership development office. And yes, and so we support all school leaders. We support aspiring school leaders, to really make sure that that they're fully developed so they can be successful, and particularly in an urban school district as large as ours is.
You got a good job. He
Yeah.
ain't really got to worry about that. See, Mr. Jason here, he the man that you want to go after his job. You like, man, look, I ain't trying to do no lesson plans no more. I'm trying to get up here. Let me ride around here to these different schools so I can see what you're not doing.
But my most rewarding job was that of a teacher, right? And so I don't feel like you can be a successful administrator, a successful principal, unless you've done the work of being a really good teacher and a strong teacher, which requires that attention to detail, that attention to not just lesson planning, but tending to the whole child, And so I loved being a teacher, so, and I, one of the things that I tell the principals that I support and the assistant principals that I have supported, that you can't forget where you've come from, right? You can't forget your classroom experience. You can't forget what it means to be a teacher and to, have to navigate large classroom sizes with little materials and resources. You can't forget how that feels, because when you forget how that feels, then you can't really lead with the emotional intelligence that's necessary to lead.
Well, you know what, Andrew, that's funny he says that, because we've had conversations about this, Mr. Jason. Like, seems like people sometimes when they get in them high places, they kind of forget where they were. It's like, I get it. Everybody is not meant to be an administrator, correct? I get that part. But I've seen in education, especially as a black man educator, when you approach somebody about saying, hey, man, maybe 5 years or 3 years from now, I want to become a dean. It's like they give you that look like, they like you beneath them now. And it's like, I don't like that. You understand what I'm saying? Because my thing is this: if 5 years from now, if I tell you, Mr. Jason, hey, Mr. Jason, look, I know I'm just coming into education, right? I'm a good history teacher, a good science teacher, doesn't matter. But 5 years from now, I'm ready to, get into ed leadership. What is it that you can do to support me, or say, hey, want to make sure that is for you? I like a person who says, okay, let me come evaluate you. Let me see what it is that we need to work on with you. So that way we can let you know, A, it is for you, or B, you fit in right here because this is where you're more deadly at, making sure these kids get what they got to get to. So I just want to know, like, have you ever encountered or came across people who just felt like, I'm at the top now, so I'm not gonna, remember the people that was at the bottom, like.
Yeah. So let me answer your earlier question first around, what do I say to that person who's considering leadership? I think that I always start with not what you're doing, but your why. What is your why? You have to have a firm understanding of your why, particularly when you decide to take on a role as school leader, whether it's a dean, whether it's assistant principal, whatever. You have to know your why. And if you can't clearly articulate your why, then you probably should stay where you are until you've developed it and really understand. Because there's a lot to navigate than just your classroom when you become a school leader. There's a lot to navigate than just your 20 or 30 students when you become a school leader. And so I think if you're even thinking about making that transition, you really have to be grounded in your why before you take that leap. To your point around, some administrators, feeling like they're better than or disconnected. Yes, that does exist, right? And not necessarily at the principal level as much, but particularly at the central office level, is really easy to become to feel disconnected when you're not in the building with children. Things tend to become spreadsheets and data points, and you kind of forget the human aspect of what it all means. And so it's just really it's really important that the higher up you get in education, you have to be more intentional about how you remain connected to communities, to children, to teachers, etc., so that you don't and remember your why and stay connected to your why as you get higher and higher up in the field.
Right.
I think that's the only way that you become successful. We tend, one of the bad things that's happening in education now is that we're functioning more and more like businesses, and less about human development and staying student centered. We're more driven by concrete data outcomes and standardized tests, etc., as opposed to really understanding what does it truly mean to develop a child to be college and career ready. And so it's really important that that we remember that we're not running a business organization. We're running we're running a school whose sole intent is to keep children curious about the world so that they want to learn more and more and get better and better each and every day.
We talked about that.
Yeah, I was about to say, funny that you mentioned standardized tests. We just had a conversation not too long ago about it. It's like, what does standardized tests get you ready for? It doesn't get you ready for a career. It doesn't help you get a job. It doesn't help you, answer these job interview questions when the interview asks you. So it's like, what's the point of the standardized tests?
So everything has a place, right? It just determines about how much weight and value you give something, right? So it's always good to have data so that you know what you need to do. The problem with standardized tests is that it's used as the sole point for evaluation for teachers. It's used as a sole point sometimes for telling you what kids can and cannot do, which is not fair because standardized tests inherent in themselves are biased and so forth. But so I would say that there's never anything wrong with getting data, but it's really about what you do with that data that really matters. How does it inform what you do? How does it inform your change of practice? How do you use that data to make sure that Black and brown children aren't being overrepresented in special education pipelines? How do you make sure that you're using that data to determine which teachers require extra support and coaching and which ones you can kind of leave alone and let them do their thing? How do you use that data to determine how to allocate your funding to different schools in the district? Some need more funding, some might need it not as much, depending upon the communities where they are. So it's really about the data isn't bad, it's just how you use it. Sometimes we demonize the data, but it's really about how we use it. So I say I say standardized testing has its place in education, but should not be the sole evaluative measure of student success and teacher success.
I like it. I like it. I like it. Court has spoken. All right. Okay. What you got, Andrew?
I don't have any questions.
Oh, I do got a question. So what made you not want to be a principal anymore? Like, what made you do the transition? Why'd you take, this with the coach transition as opposed to, still being a principal?
So So I love being a principal, and I'm still a principal. My title, official title, is leadership coach, but we still fall under the principal in terms of our bargaining unit is concerned. Um, I've done the work of school leadership for 14 years, and so it was time to transition to supporting other school leaders to do the work that I've done. So it wasn't about not wanting to be a principal anymore. It's also about how can I develop myself personally and professionally, and what can I share to have a broader impact, not just on my school, but a system of schools. You know, how can I use what I've learned and instill that passion and that knowledge and share those experiences with other school leaders so we can develop a system of great schools as opposed to, just kind of want to, whatever. Yeah, so I love this book. I've learned a lot, right? I've learned that, every school is not the same. I've learned that every community is not the same and everybody's needs might be different. So it's been a really good growing professional role for me, I have to say. And I really enjoy it.
Okay. You ain't got nothing. You sure? Because I'm finna get deep. I'm finna get deep right quick. So I just need to make sure you ain't got nothing. Because when I'm about to go down this avenue right quick. Because I know Mr. Jason gonna give me some knowledge on this. But go ahead, Andrew.
Do you have any advice for any principals that wants to, change the way they want to lead?
I think that would be unique to the school leader and what he or she wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that I can give a specific answer to that question, other than evaluating where it is that they want to grow and what it is that they want to do differently, and then starting the conversation from there. Yeah, that would be the best answer to that question because everybody has unique needs. There's some school leaders who may have been in the elementary school for quite some time. They may want to transition to high school, may want to transition to special admit schools, or may decide that leadership is no longer something that they want to do. Maybe they want to play a support role, but not necessarily want to be the boss, right? Sometimes you get tired of being the boss. Sometimes you just want to support. You don't necessarily want to be in the forefront of things. So, so it would be, my approach would be to really kind of assess what is it, where does the leader feel he or she wants to grow and wants to do differently, and then kind of, go from there.
I like that. All right. So, so I'm a basketball coach. I've been a basketball coach. This is my 18th year coaching women basketball, man, and it has been a blessing for me. I'm real big on equality and equity, especially with my girls. I've taught my girls how to stand for what they believe. I support them. If they feel like they're not getting the recognition that they need, if they feel like coaches ain't working, we need to stand up. We need to voice our opinion. Even with things that went with the NCAA this year, with the men's tournament and the women's tournament, which brings me to my question to you: How do you feel about equity and equality? Like, what is it about that us as educators, coaches, administrators, what is it that we need to do to start making this thing become a reality? Start understanding that it's time to open up the doors and pulling each other in and saying, all right, we're going to do this thing once and for all.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, first you have to kind of start with understanding that, equality and equity are two different things, right? Mm-hmm. And really understanding the difference between two. And then you have to really kind of think about what is it when you're talking about equity, what is it that you want to lift out? Are we talking about racial equity? Are we talking about equity in terms of socioeconomics? What kind of equity is it that you feel as the person in charge really needs to lift out that we got to get better at, right? And I think once you determine that and start there, then it's about advocacy, right? So after and also the common also getting your organization to have a common understanding too of what true equity is. But once you do all those things, then it really becomes about advocacy. How can I advocate to make sure that I'm tearing down barriers for my organization, or you as a coach for the girls that play on your team?
Right.
How can you eliminate barriers so everyone has opportunity to kind of get what it is that they deserve? So I think we have to, so to recap, we have to separate the two out, equal versus equity. We have to really have a shared understanding of what equity would look like. What does it feel like? What will we see if we're talking about equity? And then really start advocating. What do we have to get rid of? What do we have to dismantle? What do we have to, consider when we're talking about, really making significant change that in an equitable way?
Okay. What you got?
Nothing so far.
Okay, so what about the institutional equity? Like how can we fix those type of needs when it comes to institutions like, schools? Like where do we start?
I think we start with, I do some work now in the district. I'm part of the School District Equity Coalition. And I do some work specifically with one of the subcommittees of that coalition around research and policy. But overall, as a general organization, we're starting with defining, what is equity, coming up with that shared language so that we're all talking about the same thing, right? And then having honest conversations about the inequitable practices. You can't start to dismantle or change unless you really are being honest and having honest conversations about the organization. Who are the most marginalized groups? Who is creating barriers for that most marginalized group? What are the practices that are systemic in place that are keeping the marginalized and disenfranchised marginalized and disenfranchised? Right? So really having honest conversations about that. And if everyone's not on the same page, you're not going to get a space to, really examining the system and make systemic changes, right? And so you got to start with a willingness to be uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to start with a willingness to maneuver in a space that's not comfortable, that doesn't feel good. Because it's not until you get in the muck that you really start getting the work done. If you're afraid to get into the muck, nothing's going to change. And if you're willing to start diving into those really tough spaces and places, then you'll start having some conversations that will start leading to a more equitable system. But you can't be afraid to be honest.
Right.
And also, it can't be the disenfranchised or the marginalized leading the work, right? You can't. It has to be everyone willing to kind of jump into the work and advocate for an equitable. If you're talking about school organization or district organization, can't just be the one. Can't be the black folks screaming to the top of their lungs and doing the work to try to make a more equitable district, right? If you're talking about racial equity, it's got to be everybody, and other folks got to lead the work. We know what it feels to not get the resources that we need. But until other folks start stepping up and shouting and advocating as well, we kind of stay in the same places where we were in. So it's definitely a whole organizational effort.
And see, that's the thing. Like people are scared to speak up. It's like, what are you scared about? Like at the end of the day, it's how you present it. Okay, as long as you're not presenting it off the wall, but you're expressing how you feel and it's genuine, speak how you feel, because somebody's listening. Somebody is seeing what you're saying because somebody's going through the same thing that you're going through. Like you said it. Every time it comes, and it's been like this, every time it comes to the black schools, right? We don't never have nothing, right? We don't never have the latest technology and all this stuff. Okay, well then get off your behind and speak up and say, okay, this has been going on for 15 years at my school, and yet nobody has came in here to say, you know what, we're going to reconstruct this school. We're going to give them the things that they need. We're going to give them materials they need so their kids can learn. Yet our kids decide, okay, well, we can't get it here. Then I'm gonna head somewhere else that has it, right? And we mostly know that's how white schools, right? I have no problem with that. If you fought for what you believe and there's nothing done, then okay, sometimes you gotta go, like you say, uncomfortable somewhere that you're not used to get what you need, right? It'll get you to where you gotta get to. But if you're not doing anything,
then what are you doing?
So just to be clear, what I'm saying is I don't feel like you need to leave the system and go elsewhere. I feel like you need to advocate for what's right in the system that you're in. You know, not everybody has the opportunity to just kind of up and leave a district and go to another district. I think that it's really about holding the leadership in the organization that you're in, the leadership accountable to making sure that they're advocating for the needs of advocating for equitable outcomes in the organization. You know, so you can't, and it starts from the top. You know, it really does start from the top. It starts from the leader, whether it's at the school level or the organizational level, saying, you know, I'm going to fight for what's right for my school, for my kids, for my class, etc. It really starts at the top.
Do it for your school. Do it for your students, your community, your teachers, everybody in that school. Because if you're not doing it, then what are you doing? So this is your school. You run the school. If you want to see change happening in the school, speak up. Go to the superintendent or go to the Board of Education and speak whatever's on your mind. Well, you know, they might not disagree, but at least, hey, okay, we have a problem at this school. Let's try to figure out a solution.
Well, I think one of the challenges too, particularly in Black and Brown communities, we have to do, you know, sometimes we allow education to just kind of happen to us. We don't really we're not as participative as we need to be. We're not in, you know, at the board meetings. We're not, you know, in the superintendent's office, you know, kind of laying out what we want to be done in our schools and so forth. We it's kind of like a bystander effect. We just kind of let it happen. And we have to play a more active role, and not just what happens in the classroom and in the school, but what happens in the district policies. You know, how, you know, what policies are created, and why were they created, and who do they impact, and how do they impact. Like, we have to start being more vocal in those discussions if we really want to see like the system change. When a parent in the school, a parent of a third grader in the school, you know, does that parent know what their third grade child should know at the end of the year? You know, and if they don't, why not? You know, and how has the school district or school provided that parent with that information so that they can become educated about what their child should know at the end of third grade, right? So like, it's really just about being a little bit more active, and not just being more active in the policies and in the organization. And I think that's when the real change starts to happen.
So now you heard all this, right? You see how that all came together? That sounds good. See, I like how Mr. Jason, I like how he bring it to the table. Then why is it that if we can have this conversation like this, even if it's uncomfortable, right? Then why can't we have this education of bringing more Black male educators in? Because that's a problem too.
It is a problem. Yeah, it's you know, so getting African American teachers is a problem. Administrators is a problem. You know, the education field is not as sexy as it used to be, right? You know, it's tough, and particularly if you're in an urban setting, it's really tough. And then if you're in the rich, you know, if you're in the wealthy part of the school systems, sometimes you're kind of restrained, in terms of what it is that you want to do, and what it is that you can say, and you constantly having to prove yourself, as the minority, and that kind of thing. So we have to, in terms of attracting more Black males in particular to the education system, we have to really think about how we incentivize. How do we make it attractive? How do we make it sexy? How do we make it, all those things, so that they will want to come, because this job is hard. This is being an educator. It's a hard job. It's a hard career profession. It's not something that you just fall back on, right? Because you were successful in another career, so okay, I'll go teach. I sucked at chemistry, so I couldn't become a doctor, so maybe I'll teach it, right?
Right.
Change that mindset that teaching is a science. It is a science. It is
Right.
a professional discipline, and we have to treat it as such, and we have to pay, right? We have to for the amount of work and mastery of knowledge that it takes to teach a child, we have to compensate that educator in a fair way, right? Like why are teachers, doing like Uber on the side and Lyft on the side, and working 2 and 3 jobs? Who wants to do that? So we have to elevate this career in a way that makes it more attractive.
So somebody asked me a question. It was like, why? It was like, what is my why, but how do I feel, about being a Black male educator? And I pretty much told them that, I will rise and I will fall, and maybe falling more often than rising, and that's okay, right? Because I'm still in the learning process. To me, I'm in the print stage. What I mean by the print stage, I have to go through my trials and tribulations in order to become the king that I want to be in my classroom. So for me as a Black male educator, it's not a cakewalk, right? But let me tell you, it would never be boring for me because I love what I do. When I teach history, I bring history to life. When I coach. I make sure that I give my girls what they need, just like I give my students.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I know there's going to be something new each day, because I can't have it no other way. I know I'm a breathe, live, and do everything that I've dreamed of becoming a male educator and a basketball coach. And I'm not going to let that bog me down because that's not what I am made of. Mm-hmm. So when I told them that, I think it was a principal, and that lady came up to me and was like, I want to offer you a job. She said, because I've never heard it like that before.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Jackson, that was like kind of crazy. So I was like, but you didn't even interview me. She was like, but how you sold it? She said, because you want to learn. She's saying, and you're good at what you do, but you want to become better. She said, that's the teachers that I look for.
Mm-hmm.
Was I just in the right place at the right time, or was it because how I spoke it? Like, I just want to know, because you're a principal. So if you heard me say that, like, what would go through your mind? Like, how would that make you feel? Would that be something you want to bring to your team as well?
So it's a good question. It's a powerful question in the sense that, I look, when I was as a school principal, I look for people who were willing, who had the drive and had the compassion, but also had the content knowledge, and also were able, had the pedagogical skills to teach children. Our kids, and I've only worked in Black and brown, urban, lower income communities. Our kids don't need a bunch of saviors. The ones who want to swoop in and save the kids and love them to death, and then they'll be successful. Like, that doesn't help anybody. Like, our kids need that balance of compassion and love, but also need competent people who are well versed in their content area to hold kids accountable with rigorous instruction and support. And so I think that a principal, I know for me, that's what I'm looking for. You can be Black, white, whatever, but if your only goal is to come in and you want to love the poor little brown and Black children, that ain't gonna work for me. I'm looking for people who can do that, who can advocate for, but also who can provide an educational experience for Black and brown children that is rigorous, that is fun, that is supportive, all of those things. That's what it is that I would be looking for. So if you gave me that answer, I would say great. And tell me what you can do and how do you do it? How do you determine, or how do you use data in your class and determine which children need intervention and which children need enrichment? And how do you cater to the two? How do you differentiate instruction? How do you make sure that your curriculum offers a diverse experience for your classroom? Those would be the questions I would ask you. How do you engage your parents? How do you keep them apprised of what's going on? How do you build safety nets in your kids so that nobody fails? Those are the questions I'll be asking you. And particularly as a Black male principal, you gotta bring more to the table than just being a Black man. You gotta talk about how you're going to, really make sure that our kids get the experience that they deserve to get. But I also think too that we as a nation have to do a better job of the colleges and universities that prepare our teachers. We have to really think about the teacher preparation programs in colleges and universities, and how are they preparing teachers, particularly to work in urban settings. Some of these teachers that are coming fresh out of college, they go to some really tough schools. They may stay 1 or 2 years and call it a day, and then fly to suburbs or whatever, because they haven't been equipped with the skills to be successful. So we have some work to do as a nation around our teacher preparation classes as well.
Speaking of new teachers, what kind of advice would you give to new teachers that just start their first year?
The first year?
Yes.
Good question. Seek out a support system. Seek out a mentor. I think that's important in the school as well as outside of the school, but more so in the school. You got to develop a network in the school that you're teaching in, so that because you're going to have your good, bad days, etc. I would tell a new teacher to be discerning. In other words, be mindful of the faculty lounge. Be mindful when you're being drawn into conversations that are negative and not productive about children. Be mindful when you're being drawn into deficit conversations. When people say what the kids can't do, what the parents won't do. Be mindful of staying away from those types of conversations. Invest in your own personal learning. So read up on your craft, get better at your craft. Think about how you plan. Think about who you're planning for. Think about how you're, how reflective you are, right? So when you deliver a lesson, and that it didn't do well, who gets the blame? Is it the kids or you, right? And how do you think about doing something differently or reassessing what you've done so that you can have better outcomes for the children that you're teaching? And so, and want to do it. If you're a new teacher, want to be a teacher. Like, don't understand your why, right? Understand your purpose. Your locus of control is your classroom, right? Sometimes we get into this thing, and it's a reality, right? Because I've taught in urban settings, so you want to blame the parent. The parent didn't do this. There's a lot of things that folks can't do for whatever reason. But focus on what you have power over in your classroom, and that grounds you into your next steps. And that would be my advice for new teachers.
You heard that?
I heard that.
You sure? Because I don't want your ears, you know what I'm saying? Like you got all that clogged up.
No, I got that loud and clear, especially about that teacher lounge one.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, because I'm about to be, I'm in process of being a substitute teacher in the next couple of weeks. So I'm trying to gain more information about it, so that once I have first step in that teacher's classroom, I know what to expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you're going to be one before the school year ends?
Hopefully.
Oh, okay. So number one, claim it. Don't say hope, just claim it. Number one, right? But secondly, so you're going into a very challenging situation because the school has already been happening, right? So you will be stepping in. Yeah, so you know, kids smell fear, right? So you want to make sure that you are confident. You know, kids love structure. I don't know any kid, I've never seen a kid who didn't like structure. They might fight you on it, but they like structure. They like to know what to expect. They don't like surprises. They like routines. You know, people feel like they don't, but they do. They trust me, they really do. They appreciate it. You know, and so you want to think about routine for everything, right? You know, how do they ask a question? How do they go to the bathroom? How do they ask for a pencil? How do they get your attention? You know, how do they walk into the room? Where do they sit? Like, you know, those kinds of things you have to think about so that you can have a well-managed class so that instruction can happen. You know, so teaching is really 70% in how you plan. It really is. The planning is so important. 60%, 30% is just really how are you planning before you even walk into that room on the first day.
Okay. He said, claim it. Don't hope for it.
I done told you that before. I don't see. Why you doing this to me? Every time I give you some idea, when company come over here, you be wanting to act brand new. See, I don't like that. I don't like that about but not yet, man. But you're right. Claim that. No matter what it is you want to do, you claim it.
Yep.
Claim it, man. For real. Yeah, this was great. I really enjoyed and just you said when it comes to oh my goodness, see, I'm on here with a principal. I can't even say the word. I hate when I can't say the word, the different word. Okay, but what I like to do with my class, I like flexible grouping. I found flexible grouping for history. It was just better for my class because my class likes to come together. One of the things that I found out too is when we did interest grouping, it was based off the topics that they wanted to study, right? So when my principal saw this, he was like, okay, I like that. He was like, because we're not just going based off what it says in the standards, we're not going based off what it is. You know how teachers be, we're going to just go chapter 1, 2, 3. No, what is it in history that you really want to know, right? What is it that sparks your attention? And then I found that the ability of grouping and putting students with similar skills and abilities levels together. And with that, I started to find that a mixed ability grouping was putting my students with varying strengths and weaknesses together to learn from one another. And that's how I was able to get my kids from 35% to 90%.
Congratulations.
So, but like you said, I'm not going to tell you, well, Mr. Jason, I'm a black man, and the kids really need me, and no, like when you hire, this is what I like to do with history. Is this something that fits the criteria of what you're looking for in the teacher? Because if it is, now I can bring it into what it is we want to incorporate, right? Because we know math, reading, science, those are the ones that you need. When it comes to standardized testing, they ain't really too much caring about history, PE. They want to know what you can do reading and math, right? So how can I take history and incorporate it into a fun class? Because I already know you're going to get the rigorous work you need in math, English, and sometimes your brain just needs a break, if that makes sense. But when we come to history, I'm still going to make sure that if I change my classroom into a museum, why did I change it into a museum? Because I know we're having problems with dates. So when we do the museum, everything is going to be based off the date of when it happened. That way you can continuously see it. So when we're taking the tour around the museum, you're constantly seeing the date. So now when I put the assessment in front of you, you now see what we've learned from the museum when it's on the assessment, it clicks. What do you think?
Well, I want to offer you an alternate opinion and say that oftentimes we lay a lot of weight solely on reading and mathematics. And that typically is what happens, particularly in urban districts where that are poor and Black and brown children exist.
Right.
Oftentimes we put high priority over reading and mathematics, and our children sometimes never get a solid foundation in history and civics until they get to high school where they have to do it. Right. And I would offer and say that it is that history and civics that is just as important as reading and mathematics. And sometimes we become more, the disinterested reader becomes more engaged when he or she understands the context around what it is that he or she is reading. Right. And so I think we have to elevate history to more of a to a space that lays just as much weight to it as being important as those other content areas. I think we need that. I think standards are extremely important and they have their place. But I also think as a history teacher, I mean, history is happening right now, right? We're waiting for this trial to be over, right? And what's going to happen then? You know, we just left 4 years of madness, you know, but it had a lot of implications for, you know, policy. It had a lot of implications for, you know, education, you know, everything. And so I think that it's important to lift out student voice and interest, because that is key, right? That's how you keep a disengaged kid engaged, by lifting their voices, but also really thinking strategically around, you know, how do I show them that it's really important that they understand public policy or how laws are made, et cetera, because this is the impact it has in our communities. That's why we stay marginalized, right? You know, because, you know, if you go into an elementary school, you know, a lot of kids in Black and brown neighborhoods don't even know, you know, their local politicians, their mayors, you know, their governors, you know, their state attorneys. Like, they have no idea who these people are, and these are the people who have profound impact on their immediate community environment, right? But if you don't understand how it works, if you don't have the historical context about how it works, then you can't change it. You can't dismantle a system that you don't understand, right? And so I think it's time that even at the elementary level, we start really thinking about how do we guarantee that our children do more than just reading and mathematics, that they see history and civics as just as important as those other content areas, and that because that's how we empower children, right? That's how we empower them. You know, when they have a full understanding of how things work, and that is a working knowledge of history and the civics.
See, I'm finna take all that and I'm run with it. Like I said, I want to be, because Andrew and I'm gonna tell you, like, history is my thing. That's what I love. But I want to continue to be a better history teacher, because just like I tell my kids all the time, we can talk about 1800s. We can talk about all that, right? But let's talk about the now, because history is always being made. Like I told my kids, you all made history. You went from 35 to a not. That's history, because it shows that you're taking what it is that I'm teaching you and you're incorporating it into the lessons. You get what I'm saying? And you're right. Whatever verdict happens is going to be history, because see, now we need to really see if these people are really starting to realize what's really going on, or are we going to brush it underneath the rug as we always do? And that, like, oh, well, you know, XYZ no, like, yeah, but that's a conversation for another day, Mr. Jason. But I definitely appreciate all that you've given me, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So this will conclude our episode with the one and only Mr. Harris. So thank you for joining us on today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. I love this collaborative, this work. We have work to do for our kids, right? My hat's off to you, to both of you, for the work that you're doing. I thank you for the work that you're doing, and I hope that you stay in the struggle, this necessary struggle, this necessary good fight for equitable outcomes for our children in education. So thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. Went in my bag. I told you I was going in my bag.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did.
Yeah. But look though,
you had your bag of tricks.
But it was fun. And here's the thing, like, I want people to understand this too. Another type of differentiation instruction is a raft. Okay, so that's your row, your audience, your format, and your topic. Okay, I know I said it wrong. I don't care. Like, I'm human, but we know that is differentiation. You know what I'm talking about. All right, we're gonna do yeah, that word. Let me get my thoughts together because it's like a little tongue twister. Okay, differentiate. What? Okay, look, coach human. All right, but look though. So just just heads up. All right, if we're talking about Leonardo da Vinci, okay, that's the role, correct? And then your audience is patrons, okay? So those are the people, what I'm saying, that, observe and things like that. And then your format is painting of Mona Lisa. So that infamous, famous painting from him, the Mona Lisa. And then the topic is urge patrons to buy your artwork. So what are we doing? When you want somebody to buy your artwork, you have to what? You have to sell it.
Solid. Yep.
So when we're in the classroom as a teacher, right, I have to convince you to understand why is it important for you to take this assessment. What is it that you're going to gain when you take this assessment? Because when you take this assessment, it lets me know where we need to go. So if we're in the middle, then we can move to the top. But if we're at the bottom, we got to get to the middle. And if there's some kids at the top, then guess what? I need you to get off your high horse and help those kids in the middle get to the top. Okay? So same thing with anybody who does theater. Okay, the role, Shakespeare, right? Our audience, Romeo and Juliet fans. The format is the play script, right? And so recreate the ending of Romeo and Juliet. Everybody knows Shakespeare's sad as hell. We know that, right? Let's recreate it. Can they live for once? Let's see what happens when they live. If it was me, I'm going to recreate it. Guess what I'm going to do? It's like black and white. Those two families never got together. They couldn't stand each other. Let's do this once. Let's have everybody come together for once and understand and sit down and ask, why is it that you don't like me? What is it that I did to you that said, okay, we don't like them, we ain't gonna run with them like that? Because once you bring that together, now Romeo and Juliet becomes a more beautiful piece. Because now you got the families together. Now you see the genuine love that Romeo had for Juliet. You see the respect factor that he had for Juliet. You see everybody putting their pride to the side and say, hey, we're both rich. How can we become richer? Let's bring our companies together. That's it. I'm done. Drops mic. All right, because that's what it's about to me. That's what education is about to me. That's what you got for me, Andrew. I ain't got nothing else to say, bro. I don't just coach.
He telling. He telling.
But nah, we have to, for all our teachers out there, man, let's put our differences aside and let's stop feeling like we're better than that person because we've been here 30 years or I was teacher of the year or my classroom is better than yours, and let's stop this.
Oh, I'm teacher of the year, so you should talk. You should listen to me. Okay.
Not really. Let's learn from each other. And just because I'm a black male educator, don't send a child to my class all the time for disciplinary action. Like, no. Let's not do that. Because that can be that's equity too. And if anybody understands what equality and equity means, there's a lot of things that people aren't grasping when it comes to that. And I know that we're about to get off. But at the end of the day, people need to understand when it comes to equality, that it has to do with giving everyone the exact same resources. So whatever your disciplinary is in your class, then give me that exact same resource so I don't have to send nobody down to your classroom, right? But whereas equity, it involves distributing resources based on the needs of the recipient. So what is it that he needs to get his act together? And the co-host, Coach Darnell.
So yeah, this will conclude. I know I already said this already, but this will actually conclude our episode with Future Educators Talk. We will see y'all next week with another interview. Yes, we got interviews back to back for you with Miss Miller. So, of course, we got some questions. Of course, we do. Of course, we do.
Miss Miller, hey, yo, listen, hold on. Can I get a preview of Miss Miller? Because, like, listen, you know, Mr. Jason, I had to go according to, it ain't even no script, y'all. I just want to let y'all know that we don't write scripts. So
No.
My boss right here, this guy, this is my boss, right? My boss had me all lost today. I clearly asked this man one question. I said, can you give me some information? My man's ain't hit me back up, y'all. I just want to let that be known. He did not hit me back up. I felt some type of way. Okay, not in a bad way, but he ain't hit me back up. So I was lost. Like, I ain't even finna flex. Then he told me before it started, oh, yeah, that's the guy. You're wrong. You're wrong. I'm pointing at you. You're wrong because you know better than this. Like, I don't.
So, let me go ahead and tell you who Miss Miller is. Miss Miller is an educator as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she's another educator as well.
Is she a content area educator? Or is she like up in the game, administration? Like, where's she at in the game?
I have no idea.
Okay. Where's she from?
Nah, that
okay.
I don't know.
All right. So here's your homework. Since I'm a history teacher,
find out.
Homework. You're gonna give me the date, the time, the place, where you were born. Okay, because I need to know this stuff.
I got you.
But but no, on a serious note, I just, you know, that way, you know, I can, you know who she is, man. I love to know about our people. Like I said, I had fun tonight, and let's continue, man, and do what we got to do. So.
Yep, the work never stops. So
never stop.
All right. Well, we will see y'all next week.
Next week, so I'm about to go eat.
I am too, because I'm hungry. And I'm tired. I gotta work in the morning.
So listen, like, I'm really about to go get a new tattoo. So yeah. Holla. Yeah, you can call me the tattoo educator. I ain't ashamed of who I am. All right. All right.
All right. See you.